Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In these early days of a new year, I continue to bring you the story of Hoài Ca and Hùng, a story that unfolds slowly, filled with emotion, and closely tied to experiences that perhaps each of us has gone through at some point in our lives. In the first days of the year, when Tet has just passed, the atmosphere of spring still lingers everywhere. The scent of traditional cakes, incense smoke, and family reunion meals seems to remain in every corner of the house, in every small alley. Everyone hopes for a peaceful new year, good health, smooth work, and a warm, harmonious family. Amid the hurried pace of life and the endless worries of making a living, sometimes what people need most is something very simple: to return home, to sit beside their loved ones, to feel a familiar sense of peace that no other place can replace. That day, Hùng returned home after a long day. The familiar village road appeared before him, the same old bamboo fence, the same wooden gate weathered by time. But as he reached the gate, he suddenly stopped. The front door was wide open, not half closed as it usually was. A faint sense of unease rose in his chest, subtle, but enough to make his heart sink. A flood of thoughts and unspoken questions briefly crossed his mind. Hùng hurried into the yard, his footsteps echoing clearly in the quiet space. He called out loudly, his voice filled with urgency and worry, calling for his mother out of pure instinct. For a moment, the house seemed to fall completely silent, making each of his breaths feel sharper than ever. Then, as he stepped inside, Hùng froze. His mother was there. She sat inside the house, her figure thin yet familiar, her eyes carrying the weariness of a long period spent working away from home. In that moment, the chaos of thoughts in Hùng mind came to a halt. He said nothing at first, simply standing there and looking at her, stunned and overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't quite name. She had returned the day before, quietly coming home without having the chance to tell him. His mother explained that the work in the city had become too exhausting. The days of manual labor, the early mornings and late nights, the pressures that her age and health could no longer keep up with. Tasks that seemed simple to younger people had become overwhelming for her. After much thought and consideration, she decided to stop. Leaving behind the troubles of a foreign place and the unfinished worries of that life, she chose to return home, to the place where she still felt she belonged. Her voice was slow and calm, without complaint, as if she were simply recounting a carefully considered decision. Hùng listened quietly, his heart filling with mixed emotions. The small house seemed warmer with her presence, yet somewhere in that space, there were still things left unsaid, thoughts not yet put into words, silently lingering between mother and son, waiting for another moment to be shared. After listening to his mother's story, Hùng did not reproach her or hold any resentment. He simply sat down quietly across from her, his voice slow and gentle, reassuring her that her decision to come home was the right one. At this stage of life, health mattered more than anything else, more than money or unfinished plans. He told her that as long as she was safe and well, where she lived or what she did no longer mattered much. His words were not elaborate, yet they carried the understanding and care that Hùng had always had for her. Hearing this, his mother smiled softly. The smile was tinged with fatigue, yet it felt calm and sincere. She said she would consider it just another experience in life. Losing a bit of money did not matter because in the end, what she needed most was peace of mind. No matter how much one could earn in a foreign place, if each day was filled with heaviness, worry, and exhaustion, it all became meaningless. Returning home, seeing Hùng again, sitting in the familiar house, for her, that was already enough. Between mother and son, there were no flowery words of encouragement or grand declarations. They spoke to each other in simple, honest terms. Yet it was precisely that simplicity that brought a sense of warmth, enough to soothe the quiet weariness both had carried for so long. The atmosphere in the house gradually settled, as if each sentence gently drew them a little closer together. Then the conversation slowly turned to Tiu San. When her daughter was mentioned, the mother's voice softened and grew heavier. A trace of worry and remorse appeared in her eyes. She admitted that it had been a very long time since she dared to reach out to Tiu San on her own. It was not because she did not miss her. On the contrary, she missed her too much, and that was what made her afraid. She knew that her daughter still carried wounds that had not yet healed, things that could not easily be let go. She feared that if she appeared too hastily, if she tried to step into her daughter's life now, it would only make Tiu San feel more conflicted and hurt. Hearing this, Hung fell silent for a moment, then gently comforted her. He told his mother about Tiu San's current life, that she was doing much better than before. Tiu San now had her own job, new relationships, and most importantly, someone by her side who truly cared for her, looked after her, and loved her sincerely. Though he did not go into great detail, every word Hung spoke carried reassurance, as if trying to ease at least part of the worry that had long weighed on his mother's heart. As she listened, the mother's expression gradually softened. The lines at the corners of her eyes seemed to relax slightly, replaced by a quiet calm mixed with a fragile sense of hope. She said nothing more, only nodded gently, as if reminding herself that perhaps, in time, things might indeed get better. In that moment, within the stillness of the house, unspoken emotions continued to linger quietly, flowing onward, waiting to be carried into the days yet to come. That afternoon, while he happened to have some errands in town, Hung stopped by a few familiar shops to buy Tony some school supplies and a few simple building toys. He didn't choose impulsively. Instead, he spent quite a long time examining each item, carefully considering what would suit the boy's age and abilities. They weren't expensive or flashy toys, but items that could help Tony learn through play, improving concentration while stimulating his thinking skills. In Hung's mind, every item he bought carried a certain meaning. They were not just gifts, but a quiet way of accompanying his child on the path of growing up. To Hung, a child's future had never been measured by material value. He firmly believed that what mattered most was the daily presence of adults, their patience, and the steady, silent love they gave. As long as there was someone willing to stay, to guide, and not give up, even a child who started more slowly than others could still grow strong in their own way. Thinking of Tony, Hung felt a mix of responsibility and warmth rise within him, an emotion hard to put into words, yet one that constantly pushed him to try even harder. As the afternoon passed, the sunlight slanted gently across the house, no longer harsh but soft, casting a pale golden glow over the familiar yard. Hoài Ca returned home after a day of work, her steps unhurried, her body slightly tired, yet her face calm. She paused for a moment in the yard, quietly admiring the flower beds planted around the house. The buds were full, ready to bloom just in time for Tet, carrying a subtle sense of anticipation. In that moment, the small house felt unusually peaceful, as if separated entirely from the worries of the outside world. Inside the house, flower vases arranged by Hoài Ca herself were placed in various corners. Nothing elaborate or dazzling, just simple, modest flowers full of vitality. Each vase reflected care and attentiveness, much like Hoài Ca herself. Quiet, persistent, and always doing things with sincere dedication. Simply stepping into the house and noticing those small details was enough to feel the unique warmth she brought with her. While the light of the afternoon still lingered in the room, Hung took out the school supplies he had just bought and placed them on the table. He used this time to sit with Hoài Ca and begin teaching her how to read and write. He didn't wait until evening. He wanted to make use of the moment while their minds were still fresh and the daylight still sufficient. From recognizing letters and distinguishing each character to practicing the most basic strokes, Hung patiently demonstrated and then let her try. He understood clearly that Hoài Ca's inability to read or write was a significant disadvantage, not only for her, but also something that would later affect how she helped teach Tony. Hung knew that at this age, learning would be difficult. It wouldn't come quickly, and it wouldn't be easy. But that didn't discourage him. He didn't expect Hoài Ca to become skilled right away, nor did he set lofty goals. To him, as long as she was willing to sit down to hold the pen and to make an effort bit by bit, that was already a great step forward. He believed that moving slowly was not a weakness, but a way to build everything firmly from the foundation up. The letters Hoài Ca wrote that afternoon were still shaky and uneven, some slanted, some not yet fully formed. Yet within each clumsy line was a clear effort. She focused intently on the page, careful with every stroke, as if afraid that a single moment of distraction would lead to a mistake. Hung sat beside her, not rushing or pressuring her. He simply reminded her gently to write more slowly, telling her there was no need to hurry, because the good things in life naturally take time to grow. In the quiet space of the afternoon, the soft sound of the pen touching paper echoed steadily. That sound was not only a sign of learning to write, but also a testament to perseverance, to the quiet faith Hung placed in Hoài Ca. And among those still awkward lines of handwriting, a new journey seemed to be quietly unfolding, slow, yet steady, continuing toward the unfinished paths that still lay ahead. That afternoon passed slowly and gently, as if time itself wished to linger a little longer within the small yet warm space of Hung's family. The late sunlight was no longer harsh, but softer, spreading a pale golden glow across the familiar yard, over the old tiled roof and the trees standing quietly in the light breeze. Everything unfolded in a simple, ordinary way, yet it brought a rare sense of peace, one that sometimes takes a very long time for people to feel again. In the yard, the small dog had its long, fluffy fur trimmed by Hung after many days of neglect. It sat obediently, occasionally tilting its head to look at him, its tail wagging lightly as if it understood it was being cared for. When a new collar, clean and perfectly fitted, was placed around its neck, it immediately ran around the yard in excitement, as if proudly showing off its own little joy. The soft sound of its paws on the dry ground gently broke the silence, adding a pleasant liveliness to the space. In another corner of the yard, Hoài Ca carefully examined each chicken egg to continue incubating them. She held each one up to the light, observing the thin shell closely, her eyes focused and calm. After checking, she placed the eggs down very gently, as if afraid that even the slightest mistake might undo all the effort so far. These tasks were small and seemingly insignificant, yet they helped create a rare rhythm of peaceful living. It was a kind of peace not born from grand things, but gathered from ordinary moments, quiet, yet enduring. There was no noise, no need to show off or prove anything. Just very real moments of a family living together in understanding and sharing. Hung and Hoài Ca went into the kitchen together to prepare dinner. One washed the vegetables, the other lit the stove, each task flowing naturally into the next, without many words. Sometimes they exchanged a few simple questions, sometimes they worked quietly in silence, but that silence was never heavy. Instead, it felt comfortable and close. After finishing the cooking, they took the time to tidy up the house. Hung wiped the tables and chairs, arranging things more neatly, while Hoài Ca swept the floor and adjusted small corners that had long gone unnoticed. Everything happened in a steady, harmonious rhythm, as if they had been living this way for a very long time. No one needed to remind the other, and nothing had to be clearly assigned, yet everything fell into place, tidy and cozy. Just then, Hung's mother stopped by for a visit. She entered the yard with slow steps, carrying a large bunch of bananas in her hands, still green, but firm. She gently placed them in the kitchen corner, smiling as she said she had brought them for Hoài Ca and Tony to eat gradually, a simple gift from the countryside. It wasn't anything valuable, but it carried genuine care. Her presence made the already warm house feel even livelier, filling the space with closeness and familiarity. Hoài Ca quickly invited her inside, her voice gentle and sincere. She prepared tea, pulled out a chair for her to rest, small gestures, yet full of thoughtfulness. When it came time for the meal, Hoài Ca invited her to stay and eat with the family. At first, she hesitated, saying she had only stopped by briefly and didn't want to be a bother. But faced with Hoài Ca's sincerity and Hung's subtle, understanding nod, she finally agreed. The meal laid out on the table was nothing elaborate or luxurious, just familiar, everyday dishes. Yet it was precisely that simplicity that made the meal special. Each dish carried care, effort, and above all, affection. When everyone sat down together, the small kitchen felt unusually warm. The soft clinking of bowls and chopsticks, the gentle laughter and conversation, never loud, but enough to wash away the worries and heaviness of the days before. Ordinary stories were shared slowly. Sometimes it was just a few words asking about health, sometimes small details from daily life. Nothing extraordinary, yet everyone felt lighter at heart. In that moment, the exhaustion and concerns of the outside world seemed to be set aside, making room for the simple peace right in front of them. While waiting for the rice to finish cooking, Hoài Ca brought out the materials for making handmade flowers and gently invited her mother to join her. She patiently guided each step, from arranging the petals, adjusting them evenly, to fixing the stem. Every movement was slow and careful, as if afraid of making her mother feel awkward. Her mother's hands were no longer as nimble as before. Her fingers trembled slightly with age, her eyesight weaker, requiring close focus to work. At times, she paused to think before continuing, yet she never showed frustration. When the handmade flower was finished, even though it was a bit clumsy, the petals not perfectly even, she still smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a brief one, but her eyes sparkled with a small, pure joy. It was the joy of creating something with her own hands, of sharing time with loved ones. Watching that moment, both Hoài Ca and Hung felt their hearts soften and warm in the most natural way. Amid the final days of the year, when everyone is busy with countless worries, perhaps the most precious thing is not money or material possessions, but simply being together, sharing peaceful moments like these. Hoài Ca and Hung were living through calm, happy days, welcoming a new year filled with hope and plans still quietly taking shape ahead, all beginning from the smallest, most ordinary things. If you're also following the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to catch the next videos. And please give the video a like and leave a comment below to share your thoughts and feelings.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Tạm biệt mọi người.